I didn't want to interrupt the room,
That's
so I stayed
fine, all right.
outside.
Can I ask one of you to poke
Yeah,
the little white thing there? Crash, bang. Did someone else come in?
No.
Oh. So we are in our 18th chapter. What verse are we on?
6.
Verse 6. Will you help us out, please, Deep?
Yeah.
Do you have enough room?
एतान्यपि तु कर्माणि सङ्गत्यक्त्वा फलानि च कर्तव्यानिति मे पार्थ निश्चितं मतमुत्तमम्. But even these actions should be performed leaving aside attachment and the fruits, O Partha. This is my certain and best belief.
So the subject under discussion is, how do we have sannyasa, renunciation, and tyagaha done in the proper way, the sattvic way? So here Krishna is saying, do not withdraw from the world. Now, what he's doing here, I think I may have told you that this 18th chapter is a recapitulation of the entire text. And he's recapitulating the teaching of karma yoga. What do we have karma yoga for? Because most of us, our minds are filled with extroversion. We're filled with desires, with fears, with paranoias, with control issues, with all sorts of things. This is the human condition. Can't snap your finger and make them go away. So before we get the deeper fruits of meditation, for most of us, we need to practice karma yoga. There are 5 elements to karma yoga set forth in chapters 3, 4, and 5. So the first thing that Krishna says is, act, O Arjuna. Act. When the mind has quietened down, and how did my friend Anne say? She says, oh, the meditation cushion calls to me more and more. Isn't that a wonderful expression? It's not like she's going to the meditation cushion, it's calling to her. For this intense introversion of the mind. But in the beginning, no, it's a discipline. Sometimes it's hard to do that discipline, meaning our mind is extroverted. So if we try to refrain from action out of willpower, it's probably not going to be very effective. So what do? Act. But how? Gita says, according to your swadharma. Swa means self, dharma means the nature or the essence of something without which it would not be the thing that it is. The exoteric meaning is your obligatory actions. Frankly, this text is largely aimed at the Brahmin class and Kshatriya class, meaning there are rituals that you are supposed to do and certain modes of behavior that are required by your caste and clan. But the deeper meaning, what's our swadharma? It's our calling, our vocation, according to our inherent nature. I like to use the metaphor of the snowflake. Every snowflake is different, yet they're all water. So you can't be somebody else. Does us no good to say, oh, I should be like so-and-so. I want what they have. I want to be like them. I'm sorry, they're taken. You can only be you. So we act in the world according to our inherent latent proclivities in a way that's in accordance with decent behavior. This doesn't mean, oh, what I wanted to do was hit everybody I'm bad at. No, it doesn't mean that. But start aligning your time, your work, your life along intelligent ways of living. So it's not just job, it's other stuff too. This is according to your swadharma. Any questions about what this means? Act, O Arjuna. Second principle, according to your swadharma, your inherent latent proclivities. Third, in the yajna spirit. Yajna means a sacrifice. So you've got a new employer. You don't work for Facebook anymore, you work for God. If you're in a relationship, you're not in a relationship with this fellow or this woman. You're in a relationship with God. We do everything for God, making it sacred. Deeper understanding of this when we go deep into the fourth chapter. Deva here is the presiding principle over any field of human endeavor. Sometimes it means the sense organs, sometimes it means the powers of nature. In Gita, this context, it means the presiding principle over the field of endeavor. So Fang is what did you call? How would you call your title?
General partner.
But what do you do?
Investments.
Investment. Okay, so you're serving the investment god. That's the presiding principle over the field of endeavor. So you do it in a way that's sacred, with integrity, with authenticity. What do you do? The
Me?
product manager, aren't you?
No, I'm a content manager.
Content manager. Okay, so you serve the content god. See, that's the Deva, the presiding principle over that field of endeavor. So you serve that in a way that is to propitiate the deity, meaning to do a good job. And then Krishna says, if you do it from that standpoint, then you get the prasad, the fruit of the sacrifice. So you're an inventor, or you run a company with a new product. You're serving the widget god, you see. And, so are you clear about this idea of yajna spirit? Everything for God. Act in the world according to your inherent latent proclivities in the yajna spirit. Now he's recapitulating also the fourth element, renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action, the karma phalam. focus our attention on the work itself. Krishna says, I am the karma phala data. I am the giver of the fruits of action. So let's say someone's an inventor, they can work very hard to invent something, and it doesn't work. Okay, let it go. Move on. So all we get in life is work. Now, if you work in the world as a karma yogi, you have the best chance of success. But if you take the job, for example, just because it's got the highest salary, and you're alienated from the work itself, you're probably not going to be very happy, and you probably won't do good work. There are some people who think the best job is one where you don't have to work very hard. You can play hooky a lot. It's easy to do and they can't fire you. That's an incredibly alienated way to work. And any of us who've been in a culture with a bureaucracy where there are people like that, it's maddening dealing with people like that who don't care. So we have to let go of our attachment to the outcome. Let go of our attachment to the fruits of action. Any thoughts on this?
How would this apply to what you do in your life that is not your work?
Give me a specific.
Relationship with your friends, family, with yourself.
Give me a specific action, and I will talk about how you apply it.
Oh, I don't know, like if you want to pick up running every morning, how could that be done?
Okay,
like this?
so you want to take up running.
Mhm.
So look to see, why do you want to run? That was good for your health.
Mhm. Yeah.
It keeps you in good shape so you can date. Nothing wrong with that. So you take up running. Is this in accordance with your swadharma? Now, for example, if you have the desire, I just want to lie on the couch all day and eat ice cream, it's probably adharmic in the end. It sounds pretty healthy. Now, what is your mind going to do? The mind says, oh, I need to be able to run so many miles every day or I'm a failure. No, let it go. Do your best. Do work. Propitiate the running God. You put the time, the energy in every day, letting go of the fruits. Oh, today I didn't meet my goal. Okay, let it go. Today I did better. Fine, let it go too. Go of success and failure. Just keep putting in the work.
Even if the result, let's say running,
Pardon me?
even if the result depends completely on you, like that running 30 minutes or meditating 30 minutes, if you don't do it, you also just let it go and move on.
Well, you're either going to meditate or run 30 minutes or you're not.
Mhm.
But there's no virtue. You don't get, some people think that if I beat myself up, somehow that's going to motivate me. I've been doing this work now almost 48 years. If I had ever seen anyone get value from beating themselves up, I might recommend it as a practice. Never seen it in all those years. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends and yoga students. Do your best. Best. But you do it. That's the first one. Act. You see.
Yeah.
Now you look at what your motivation is. If your motivation is, oh, I want a beautiful body so I can have a hot boyfriend, you might want to look at that. And is that dharma? That's okay. Just notice it. You can let it go. Are you attached to the result? Are you attached to the result?
Adharmic just means
Against what's the good for our lives. Dharma means law. It means the path. It means the essence of something. We want to live a life according to the Dharma, intelligent living. There's do's and there's don'ts. Did that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. Thank
An
you.
ethical life, not necessarily a moral life. You know, I make the difference. Morals are usually externally imposed from the outside. Like, for example, if you look at the 7 deadly sins in the Christian Bible, you know, sloth, gluttony. I tell you, most people I know, they're far more afflicted by self-obsessed fear than they are by gluttony. I think self-obsessed fear is a much greater problem. You got to be subtle about that.
Mhm.
How would you define self-obsessed fear, Jim?
How am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think of me? This constant hypervigilance. Am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to fall into some abyss? Usually traces itself back to a punishing parent, or you're hypervigilant, or abusive situation where you never know whether you're going to screw up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Many of us grow up in situations where we have this hypervigilance, which is self-obsessed fear. And yoga says, strive for authenticity rather than being a goody-goody. You're not going to feel safe if I behave right. If I just do it right, I can make my way through life and nobody will attack me. Anybody have that particular one going on? That's a burdensome way to live. Is that useful?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I think I was like that to a large extent. And I translated that into over project managing everything in my life. To the extent that I was constantly stressed and constantly anxious and
Perfectionism.
ish.
Yes, if I am perfect, then I'll be okay. And you're constantly kind of standing outside yourself. Am I doing it okay? Did I screw up? And then you become a people pleaser. You know, you're constantly kind of trying to read people. What do they want? And I'll become what they want.
But then when you also become that way, you don't really please people. You're stressful to be around as well.
Yes.
And so
yes.
that happened to some.
Did you all hear what she said?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
very attempt to please people, the hypervigilance, is stress. And that makes other people uncomfortable in the end.
Yeah.
So I say strive for authenticity. Now, deep down inside, you're not a monster. We have, it's very funny. right now we have this thing about language, like you don't want to be gender specific, don't say man or woman, say person. Are you in groups where they do that? Well, person comes from the Latin persona, for sound. You know what it refers to?
So each sound.
The masks they used in Greek and Roman theater. You ever go to a theater and on the side of the proscenium, you'll see the happy mask and the sad mask? You've never seen those? Those are persona. So the personality, the person, is the mask we wear in the public to be socially appropriate, to try to please people. And why do we do it? It's because we think if people really knew who I was, they'd run, because I'm a monster. I'm unlovable. Now the paradox, once we start to take the risk to share pain, fears, that stuff starts to melt away, and something very authentic and very individual at this level starts to emerge. Now, you tell me, when you're in a group of people and there's somebody there trying to impress everybody, I've been here and I own this and I have this kind of car and I'm wearing this kind of watch or jewelry and I know this person and I've been to that person. What's your response usually?
A little bit of wariness.
But what happens when you're with someone and they open their heart and they tell you their story, their struggles, their triumphs? What happens in your heart?
You feel closer.
Hmm?
You feel closer.
Yes! In fact, we love them. This is intimacy. And yet, in our craziness, we're so afraid to do that. And instead, we present the people pleaser. Now, once you start to share, beginning with people you can trust, this terrible person you think you are, when it gets from between your ears and out your mouth, you begin to see, oh, it's not really true. And then something that's natural and spontaneous, it's akin to that wonderful childlike quality that starts to emerge. And all of a sudden, people want what we have. We become lovable. So there's 3 layers. There's the persona, the mask. Behind that is the monster that I think I am. Behind that is God incarnate. Behind that is the self. Any thoughts on this?
What was the 4th? The last one we find.
God, the self.
Oh, so.
That's the place where we're all the same. So the authentic Deepa will be different than the authentic you. But the self in her, the witnessing consciousness, is the self in you. That's where we're going. act in the world according to your inherent latent proclivities, your swadharma, in the yajna spirit. God's your new employer. Renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. And the last one, renouncing our identification with the sense of agency, the karta, the doer. In the 5th chapter, Krishna goes in depth. Who or what is the doer? Qualities of mind, guna, and the force of the past, karma. There is no person in there. It's a phony self. It's a shadow self. And our vain attempts to secure it and be okay is what causes so much of our suffering. So those are the 5 elements of karma yoga. When we finish this chapter, start over, get into it in depth. If you practice karma yoga, you will exhaust vasana without creating new ones. It is the science of vasana exhaustion. So in Gita, chapter 1, Yoga of Arjuna Grief, what the problem is, the disintegrated personality. Chapter 2, I call it the table of contents chapter, Sankhya Yoga. He sets forward all the major ideas that he's going to cover. Ends with the description of the person of steady wisdom. Then he goes all the way back to the beginning of the whole process, Karma Yoga, 3, 4, and 5. Only then do we get chapter 6. Who remembers what chapter 6 is about?
Who knows?
Meditation. After we've done karma yoga for some time, then meditation becomes more effective. We had talked last week about the active life followed by the contemplative life. The preparatory actions, then investigation. One of the major preparatory practices is intelligent karma yoga. Now, unfortunately, many of I'm too advanced. I've been doing all this. I don't need to do karma yoga. I'm going to study Mandukya in my very first class. You can. And you might even have an intellectual understanding of it. But then take a look at the level of your reactivity in your life. How firm is ego? Maybe karma yoga might be about. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, I have 2 questions on this actually.
Sure.
The first one is, does it go in cycles? Like sometimes you're in a contemplative life, you're less identified, and then you go out to the world and you become more identified, and you go back to being more of a contemplative life. Because you know your friend who said the meditation cushion calls me more. I feel like sometimes in my life that happens, and then while I still meditate every day, other times my life gets very busy and I don't go into that as much. So is it okay if it's more cyclical over time?
It's not a matter of it being okay. It's just what happens.
Okay.
Rather than a cycle, I would invite you to look at the image of a spiral. So Cycle means you're just going in a circle,
Right, yeah.
but a spiral means, okay, and then I'm subtler and I'm going to hit the same processes, the same attachments
Yep.
at a subtler level. And then my meditation gets deeper and I'm going to keep getting it at a subtler and subtler level.
That makes sense. And that kind of is related to my second question, which is on karma yoga. I know mostly we talk about it as if it's related to what you do in life, as in your work, your calling, your swadharma, but can it also apply to your social life, your romantic life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all of our activities. Say you're going to go on a date. Okay. Well, you're not. How do I learn how to have healthy relationships? You have to be in a relationship to learn how to have a relationship. You can't learn how to have a relationship sitting at home reading a book. You're not going to learn how to have a relationship in your psychologist's office. Those may be helpful. It's getting done. Yet you learn how to do relationship by getting in a relationship. Be willing to make all the mistakes. In a relationship, according to your inherent nature. I love what Werner Erhard used to say about romance. When you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. You may have all these ideas about who you think you ought to get involved with. You go out on a date with them and someone else. Oftentimes we can't change that stuff. Did that make sense? So that's where, there's Swadharma. I had this fellow gay man, friend of mine. He was attracted to older, heavy-set guys. And he felt guilty about it. He was really good looking. People thought he ought to like, these muscly kind of guys. That's not who he was attracted to.
But I mean, Jim, what if, for example, you have an alcoholic, father, and you're with alcoholics when you start dating men? I mean, shouldn't you try to change some of these unhealthy relation patterns?
Well, I can only tell you about what happened in my life with an alcoholic parent. Virtually every partner I've ever had has been an addict or an alcoholic. I did not know it at the time, but at least I came to the point where they were addict alcoholics in recovery.
So is your point, though, that sometimes these things are impossible to change?
Well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you have a habit of getting involved with people who are addicts and alcoholics, active drug addicts and alcoholics, it's probably not a smart idea. That's adharmic.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's where we go to kind of what's intelligent, what the scriptures say. You have a right to be involved with people who treat you well.
So in some ways, you have to act against your own nature in that case.
I didn't hear you.
So you have to act against your own nature in that case, right? Because maybe you're trying to do something that's not good for you.
In Kathopanishad, after Nachiketas talks Lord Yama into giving him the highest teaching, the first thing Yama says, anybody remember what he says? I think it's the beginning of the second chapter.
Don't ask me this question.
No, that's all in the first chapter.
The Shreyas and Prayas.
Yes. What are Shreyas and Prayas?
I like your translation, electable and delectable.
That's Swamiji's. But what he starts off, he says, two pathways approach a person. Preyas. This comes from the same root as priya, what's dear to me, what I like. Turns young. And shreyas, what's good for me. The intelligent person makes the choice to choose the good rather than just the pleasurable. Now, cool thing. Why do I think something is pleasurable? It's incredibly mechanical. It's habit. It's the force of the past. So if you have an alcoholic parent, you are going to want to date someone like your parent. It's just habit. But it's not set in stone. It is changeable. It is changeable. And in time, if we continue to follow the good becomes pleasurable. So like my friend Anne, where the cushion is calling to her. I just love that. The good has started to become pleasurable. Is that useful?
Very useful. Thank you, Jim.
I have a question about item 5 about letting go of the sense of agency.
Yes.
I don't get it. Then
I understand that you don't get it, and it's a deep teaching, and we'll put it on the shelf for now.
Okay.
Because we could spend weeks on it.
and
But I just
yeah, you just
put it there.
okay, yeah, there was. And another one, it's easier than the sense of agency. It's like what you were talking about when Deepa was asking about the people pleasing, but in general, just being very obsessed with reading what other people think of you and thinking about yourself and everything. I am aware that that is just like this obsessive narrator, and I try to ignore it, but it gets tiring over time to just almost like living with a radio station that you're trying to not to listen. Is there any other better way than to just always be ignoring it?
Understand that it's false information appearing real. FEAR. False evidence appearing real. Don't believe it.
But it never goes away.
Of course it goes away. It's like when you don't water a plant. These sanskaras, these grooves of thinking, grow, become big and leafy and have fruit and flowers because we water them with our attention. Did that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
All right, next verse.
Actually, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, the hypervigilance and the hyper-obsessive self-reflection, mostly fear-based, I have been told it's a trauma response to what kind of like what you said, to a traumatic childhood or traumatic life events. So what advice would you give to someone who doesn't even know that they're experiencing this, right? Like, or so I'll use my example because I'm not none else. I didn't know I was that till I saw the effects of that on my relationships at one point. But even then I would carry this big armor that, okay, I've had a difficult life, so this is who I am, so take it or leave it. And then it took me a long time to recognize the effect it was having on me.
So how did you do that? What was your process?
I mean, when I came here, in fact, you are the one who has told me that there's internal voices. At most, a person can have 12 tapes playing at once. And you learn to recognize those tapes. You tell them, okay, I hear you, but I don't want to listen to you anymore. So moving on. I've used that process quite a lot. But it was after I became aware of it, right?
90% of healing is awareness. And if we're attentive and we're still, the inner guru will tell you what to do about it. You are innately wise. How about that one? You are innately wise. Your inner wisdom is much smarter for you than anything I can say. But the most important part is become aware of what's going on. May I share a little bit of our conversation before class?
Sure.
So, share with the group. You said that I have discovered. What did you discover?
I have discovered that my mind is fearful, paranoid, insecure, blah, 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 the whole chain of things.
You
and
forgot
I
the
can see
control issues.
I have control issues, right, all these things. And basically, it's like I can see every thought. And when I see every thought cross my mind, I'm like, this is just nuts. And I'm like, I'm insane. This is an insane mind.
Yes.
And I just see every thought go on. And it's just like, I can't.
Now, what I shared with her is, first of all, welcome to the human condition. You know, one of the things all egos want to do is they want to feel terminally unique. Nobody knows the trouble I'm seeing. I'm not saying you don't suffer, but you are experiencing the human condition. Now, you did not become more fearful, paranoid, controlling, etc. I bet if you talk to your friends, am I this way? Oh, yeah. Everybody else knows it. They're never hiding it. But through meditation and staying conscious, we start to become aware of it. Then things can start to shift. Now, there are lots and lots of ways. If you've got a good therapist, who here has been to a therapist? If you have a crappy therapist who yawns in your face, it's not going to do much good. But if they're attentive and skillful, it's a form of meditation. What do you get out of therapy? You begin to see, oh my God, this is what's going on. It's a way to make what's unconscious conscious. Isn't that your experience? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Now, understanding is the booby prize. Now you got to do something about it. But 90% of it is just realizing what's happening. And it's shocking. The first real effort to let go of our identification with ego is the willingness to admit what's going on in our minds. You cannot save your face and your ass at the same time. You've got to be willing to show up as a basket case to yourself. And that's okay. You're fine. You're in God's hands. It's all going to be okay. Welcome to the human condition. You're not unusual. You're not the piece of shit the world revolves around. Which is how most egos see themselves.
Usually, if I started really spinning over what someone else is thinking about me, I remind myself they're probably just thinking about themselves, not me.
Well, in a sense, what other people think of us is to a large degree projection.
Yeah.
One of the little slogans I like, what other people think of me is none of my business. And what I think of other people is none of their business. But this whole idea of projection, another little slogan I love, you spot it, you got it. Someone else has a klesha, an affliction, a dosha, a defect that agitates you. Chances are it's in your own little basket of interesting little syndromes. And in the end, it's funny. In the end, we begin to develop a bit of humor about the foibles of the human condition and our own minds. So, guess what, Fang? I have control issues. And I'm very aware of them. I've been working on that klesha for 50, 60 years. Better. But I jokingly tell people I am a blind backseat driver with a poor sense of direction. That just typifies the whole thing for me. There I am in the car, can't see shit. This policeman wants to tell him, turn off here, no, go there. And I'm blind as a bat, and I don't know where we are, and I want to tell people where to drive. It's insane. It's very funny. It's very funny. Now, another interesting point. In God's hands, many of our kleshas, our afflictions, can be useful. So, one of the things I did for 20 years, my job title was director of music. I was in control. Music is not democratic. It is an autocracy. It is a benevolent dictatorship. It is. I have the mystic wand of power, my baton. They do what I say because I'm the director. So God's hands, that klesha became useful. But you never know. Good discussion. Good discussion. How are we doing on time? Oh my gosh. Next verse.
Yeah.
Niyatasya tu samyasa karmano nopapajyate mohatasya parityaga astamasa parikirtita. Verily, the renunciation of obligatory actions is not proper. The abandonment of the same from delusion is declared to be tamasic or dull.
Yes. So when we're in the state of a yogi and we're aspiring for realization, we do not give up kartavya, our bounden duty, our prescribed actions in life. It's not about, I don't feel like going to work, so I won't go to work. Get up and go to work. I don't feel like doing the dishes, so I won't do the dishes. Get up and do the dishes. We need to be able to discern the difference between the indulgent part of the mind and the deep intuition. We get so many teachings. I love the way Joseph Campbell used to call it, follow your bliss. Find what you truly love in life and follow that. But that doesn't mean I just want to lie on the couch and eat ice cream and watch Netflix. That's the indulgent part of my mind. So it takes some discernment to not always be endeavoring to self-soothe, to fix the world so that I feel okay. Intuition is a deeper place. So we have these loud trumpets in our ears. Raga, Vesha. I want to have it this way. I must have it this way. I'll never do that. I want to get rid of that horrible thing. We have to silence those voices through renunciation. Before, as the prophet Isaiah called it, the still small voice, sense of rightness can begin to do that. So, while we're still in the process of learning that, there's a good guide in our scriptures of what's intelligent action and what's not so intelligent action. One of the first places I can point you to is the yamas and niyamas of Raja Yoga. That's a very, very good place to start. You can just look them up on Google. If you want a guide.
What was the name again?
Yama, Y-A-M-A. Niyama, N-I-Y-A-M-A. There's 10 of them. One has to do with what you do in the world outside. The other 5 have to do with what's on the inside. Are you looking them up?
I'm writing it. Yeah.
Okay.
What was, I got the last name. The name was?
Yaman.
Yeah, mine. Okay. Cool, thank you.
So in the end, when we're at the highest level and we're rooted in the self, then we give up all sense of kartavya, obligatory action. What's frequently called crazy wisdom. Woman of knowledge is out of control. She moves intuitively through the world. Master Jesus was in this state. He said, I of myself do no thing, but as the Father within that doeth the work. But that's at a higher level. So Krishna here, keep acting, keep fulfilling your responsibilities, and do it because it's the right thing to do. Not because I'm going to get what I want. All right, next one.
दुःखमित्येव यत् कर्म कायक्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् सकृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत्. He who, because of fear of bodily trouble, abandons action because it is painful, thus performing a rajasic or passionate abandonment, obtains not the fruit of abandonment.
Yes. So this is what I call phony renunciation or sour grapes renunciation. So We are called to do a particular activity in life. And because of my egoism, it's painful. And so I give it up. Let me see if I can give you a real world example out of my own life. And I may have shared this with you before. When I was very young, in my 20s, I wanted to be an opera singer. But I was terribly afflicted with performance anxiety. And I can remember I was singing at this restaurant in San Diego, that's where I was living at the time. Spaghetti Factory it was called. They had young singers come in to do arias and things like that. And before I sang, I was just got up on stage and I could barely breathe and my legs were shaking. And I sang my little song and I came off the stage. And I said, I'm just going to give it up. It's too painful. It's too painful. That's Rajasic or phony or sour grapes renunciation. First of all, the desire didn't go away. What I wanted to do is sing and not be so miserable. You see? So what did I have to learn to do? Get over my performance anxiety. Get over my self-obsessed fear. Took years and years and years to not have my mind on what do other people think of me, to not have that internal voice. You've got a crappy voice, Jim. You've got a crappy voice, Jim. You can't even really carry a tune. I had one of those internal voices. Keep my mind on the music. Keep my mind on communicating intentional music. And give God the results. That's real renunciation. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
The first sets us on a path of withdrawal from life. Second, allows us to function in the world, fulfilling our place in God's plan. Now, it was very different when I turned 66. And because of my age and because of my sight, it was clear that my powers as a professional musician were starting to decline. I could tell the difference. I thought, I want to leave while I'm on top. I don't want to wait till they lay me off because I'm not able to do the job. So that's a little bit different kind of renunciation. It wasn't because of all this internal anxiety. So, any thoughts about this kind of renunciation and how that isn't real renunciation?
Jim, I couldn't tell the difference between tamasic and rajasic renunciation.
Tamasic renunciation is when you just you stay home eating ice cream. You don't do anything.
But then how is rajasic different from it?
You do it, and then because it hurts, that's the reason you give it up.
Okay, so you start, but then you find an excuse to not power through.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's not so much powering through. It's to really do our best to give up the attachment. We keep coming back to it. We keep coming back to it. keep watching, and you will fall down. Tamas, inertia, rajas, attachment, sattva, you're clear. So if you hold it from that, I think it comes clear. Does that make it easier?
Yeah.
All right. Next verse.
Question.
Yes.
Do you have any advice on how to test if something is an intellectual understanding or if it's truly something that you've experienced and have
Yes.
gone through? Like sometimes I'll think I've maybe worked through something or I've gotten to a certain point, and then out of nowhere, a month later, my ego is more gross than I'd ever imagine it could be. And I think, where did this come from?
Well, you've answered your own question.
Mhm.
So Guru shows up as temporarily the external teacher. It shows up as our inner guidance, but it also shows up as the people and situations in the world who are there to poke. So if you think you've worked through something, two things will happen. If the situation returns, you won't be agitated, or it will quit coming to you. But if months later, the situation comes your way again, and you find that you're disturbed, more work to do. And if you've committed yourself to the path of yoga, which you have done, it's too late. You can't take it back. Your own karma will keep bringing the circumstance to you. Okay, we're going to bring the circumstance to Anand, see how it does. 10%. Okay, we'll bring it to him again. I did better this time, 70, 80%. Okay, well, bring it again. And the Lord will keep bringing the situation until you quit effing. It's never out there. Is that useful?
That is.
And that's all that's going on. And if you understand that's what life is about, Ram Dass had this wonderful expression about life. It's grist for the mill. See, yoga and meditation is not some technique so that I can go out in the world and win the battle of life. Even though that sounds like that's what's implied. That may be what's happening in the beginning, but then everything switches after a while. Then you realize the goal of life is moksha. It's freedom. And the circumstances of my life, where I work this stuff out, be it relationship, money, be it job, be it housing, or all of it. In this biography of Ramana Maharshi, this documentary. So, he goes off to Tiruvannamalai. His family doesn't even know where he is. He's 16. Living in the basement, in the underground, the crypt temple of this great big huge temple in Tiruvannamalai. Finally, his mother finds out where he is, figures out who this Brahmana Swami is. So she makes the trip. I can't remember the name of the village, that was his hometown. She pleads with him to come. his mother. Total vibe. Didn't even talk. She's weeping and crying. Total vibe. Tapas.
But Jim, this is where Indian scripture really confuses me because on the one hand, we are asked not to abandon our dharmas, but the dharma of a son in the Indian context at least is to look after their parents' needs.
Well, in the end, he actually did. She came to Tiruvannamalai and became his disciple.
Oh, what a way to look after your parents.
Oh, he did look after his mother.
There's even a shrine to her in his ashram.
But I don't think he did it out of some conscious choice. She came there.
And then for him, she would have been the same as any other disciple, right?
Yes.
Although
And the cow.
Hmm. And the cow.
There's all the stories about Lakshmi, the cow, the enlightened cow. All right, we'll quit here. What verse are we on for next week?
9. You will start with 9.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. Is Desmond still with us online?
Yeah.